We continue with our discussion with our Republican State Senate candidates, Patricia McGriff and Paul Bussman. We have a mess on our hands in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, we sure do.
I read a newspaper article that the Florida Keys has not seen any oil. They don't anticipate any in the near future, but they figure that tourism is down $1 million. And I thought, you multiply that times the rest of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, this is a tremendous economic, let alone cleanup and everything else. What can the state do, Patricia?
Well, first of all, this is not an oil spill. This is a gusher. And I'm outraged with the BP executives because they did not have a plan to address something of this magnitude. And I'm outraged with the federal government for not setting a plan for this. The problem with this was that the oil rigs was way out there in the Gulf, deep into the ocean. Yeah, we can drill deep. And it was hard to get to. We need to bring these rigs closer into shore to where we'll be able to get to it. And we need to be able to drill more on inland. There's 3,000 oil rigs out there that's owned by different companies and different countries from everywhere. And, you know, this is going to affect our coastline for years, probably all through my lifetime. And it's going to be hard on the economy, not just around the Gulf, but it's going to hurt everybody in Alabama. It's very sad because our beautiful coastline is messed up. So I'm outraged. Now's the time to quit pointing fingers, though. We've got to stop the leak. We've got to seal it. And, you know, there's been a boycott on BP. And I'm not so sure I'm for this boycott. Right after this happened, we passed a BP station. I said, I'm not buying gas there. But most of these BP gas stations are independently owned by people here in Alabama or in the United States. And when we are boycotting them, we're hurting other families. It's going to be affected by this. And another thing is, before this incident, BP had the best safety rating of any of the oil companies. So boycotting is not the answer. Bringing the oil rigs closer inshore, if there's an accident, and certainly there will be another accident, but if it's closer to the shore or inland, it would only affect a small area and it would be easier to clean up.
I tend to disagree a little bit with Patricia on that one. I think that the problem is definitely BP. I mean, BP is the one that cut corners and did stuff that they weren't supposed to do. But the other problem that I saw is the corruption in the federal government and the oversight of those companies. You know, we have got to, when you say somebody is watching out for your back, they better be watching out for your back. And it's very obvious that the federal government fumbled on that, and they were getting in bed with the oil companies, and they were allowing them to do stuff that they knew was not right. And that's the problem that I see. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, is the corruption in government. You know, these people are getting paid off so they'll allow a company to make more money, and then we end up as tax-paying citizens trying to fix that problem. And the other problem I see is Governor Riley acquired booms to protect the Alabama coast. Okay, the federal government came in and says, you don't need those booms, we need them in Louisiana. And so they took those booms away from us and put them in Louisiana. That was to keep oil out of the Gulf. Governor Riley was on top of it. He was ahead of the game, and they pulled it away from us. And now we got problems with oil in our Gulf, in our bay, and in our beaches. Unfortunately, the federal government is, again, way out of line, taking advantage of states and stuff. And so we have to fix that. And the second thing that I think we've got to very closely pay attention to is the federal government, the commission that Obama has set up to fix the problem, doesn't even have anybody on the commission with any experience in deep oil wells. How are you going to fix a problem when you don't have experience or somebody with hands-on experience to fix that problem? And so I think they're giving us a lot of lip service. I think it's going to be a devastating disaster for the state of Alabama. You know, we talk about finances in the state of Alabama. The loss in lodging tax, the loss in funding and revenue for the government is going to be a huge impact on our budget next year. And we've got to figure out how to do that. We've got to have people that are experienced with finance, and we've got to have people that are experienced in other areas to make sure we get that right the first time. And I think I've got the experience in finance, being on the bank, the Cullman Savings Bank, for so many years. We avoided the greedy devastation that many banks went through. Our conservative financial values prevented us from doing that. And so now we're one of the strongest banks in the state of Alabama because of that. And that's the kind of leadership we need. But the Gulf disaster is going to have far-reaching effects on everybody, job losses and everything.
As big as it is to Alabama, I'm thinking, think of the impact in Florida with all the coastline that they had. It's now starting to reach Florida. Will that bring the nation's attention, the fact that if it really hits Florida hard?
I think the nation's attention has already been gotten, and it started with the Tea Party movement. I mean, the things that the federal government are doing is way out of line. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're doing stuff they aren't supposed to be doing. They're taking advantage of states. They're forcing stuff down people's throats, and people are sick and tired of it. And I'm sick and tired of it. And I think it's time we put the federal government back in their constitutional box. And to do that, you've got to have somebody that's willing to stand up and say, we're willing to take the risk, like Arizona is now, and take the loss of conventions that the federal government is not going to Arizona with now that they're breaking those contracts, to make that happen. And I think if a couple states get together, and I think we can do that, the federal government will back off.
Dennis, the problem here is that we have continually relied on the federal government, and I'm afraid if we keep on relying on the federal government, we're going to be continually disappointed. We need to do like Magnolia Springs did, and the citizens of Magnolia Springs did not wait for BP, and they did not wait for the government. They took it in their own hands. The people went out there and they put booms up and barriers up, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to quit relying on our federal government in many areas.